Good evening, everyone. I'm Jay Barth. I'm the director of the Clinton Presidential Library and Museum, and welcome, as always, to the Clinton Presidential Center for another great event in our Kumpuris Distinguished Lecture series. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month at the Clinton Presidential Center. The Kumpuris Lecture Series was established with a generous gift from the Kumpuris family, a couple of whom are here tonight, and it is in honor of their parents, Frank and Kula Kumpuris, and is presented by the Clinton School of Public Service at the University of Arkansas, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Presidential Library, and AT&T. Before we get started this evening, I would like us all to take a moment of silence to reflect upon the meaning of this date, 9/11, and on the lives of those lost 23 years ago today. Thank you all. Our distinguished guest tonight is Luis A. Miranda Jr. Among his many titles, Luis is a political strategist, philanthropist, advocacy consultant, and author. During tonight's conversation with Clinton School Dean Dr. Victoria de Francisco Soto, Luis will discuss many of the insights he included in his book, Relentless, My Story of the Latino Spirit That Is Transforming America. That book provides an insider's view of the landscape of American activism and politics, and it includes a foreword penned by his son, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Their conversation is a very appropriate way to begin Hispanic Heritage Month that begins this weekend. Luis's full biography is as impressive as it is lengthy, so I'll just hit some of the highlights. He is the founding partner of the Miram Group, a government affairs, lobbying, and political consulting firm in New York City. He has previously served in 3 New York City mayoral administrations. He is the founding president of the Hispanic Federation and past chairman of the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. He is board chair of the Latino Victory Fund and the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance. He and his family have supported the relief efforts in Puerto Rico following the destruction of Hurricane Maria in September 2017. They have actively fundraised for the Hispanic Federation's work in Puerto Rico, raising over $43 million to date for community organizations throughout the island. At the Clinton Global Initiative in 2022, he lent his voice to an important conversation about supporting the Caribbean's economic health and climate resilience. After the program this evening, Luis will sign copies of his book right outside of the Great Hall. You can purchase a copy of the book from the Clinton Museum store. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to encourage you to turn off or silence your cell phones. And so please now join me in welcoming Dean Vicky Soto and Luis Miranda.
Good evening. Hi. So I want to dig in. I want to jump in, and I'm going to start with the title. So I don't know if you guys can see the title of the book, the cover. The title is Relentless. And the root of this question, Luis, is the contrast between what I think about when I hear the word relentless. I think about gritted teeth, and this serious face. But then when I look at the cover of this book, again, you see this smiling, joyous person, which is Luis. So I wanted to start off by talking about why the title? Why Relentless? And I'm just going to add in here that in Spanish, relentless, the translation is implacable. And I realize we have a shared love of telenovelas. And for me,
But it's life without a telenovela.
exactly. And so when I thought about the Spanish translation of implacable, I had these visions of a telenovela and Luis, and this is a very beautiful thing, but I digress. Implacable, relentless. Why?
Well, initially, there's a documentary about me. It's an HBO called Siempre Luis. And they interviewed my son, Lin-Manuel, and they asked him to describe me, and the word he uses, it's relentless.
All right, good reason.
So, but my wife of 46 years next Monday, thank you. We're waiting for our 50th, then it's over. She is constantly trying to calm me down, which is not an easy thing to do, nor something I want to do. So everyone in my house have to live with this energy. Yesterday we were at a dinner and there were 11 chairs when there were supposed to be 10. And I didn't notice, but I felt that the table was a bit too tight. And I realized there is an extra chair, and I tell my wife, I'm going to get up, I'm going to tell them to remove. And she just holds my hands, puts it down, and says, let it be. Nobody cares about the extra chair, but I care. They removed it.
And the beauty of it is that it's relentless at every level. I mean, it's
At every level.
Pushing for political change.
Yep.
And getting that chair out.
Yes.
Okay, so it's consistency. We are on the cusp of kicking off Hispanic Heritage Month. So Hispanic Heritage Month was started by President Johnson. It was initially a week, and then President Reagan extended it out to a month. So we're going to be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. You see Hulu and Netflix. You have these new little sections that pop up of, watch Hispanic TV shows, movies. That's great. But I think before we can celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, we need to understand, who are Hispanics? ¿Quiénes somos? Who are we talking about? What are we talking about?
And that's one of the things that I talk about in the book. When we created the Hispanic Federation, we now take for granted that there is a group of people that are called Hispanics or Latinos. But that was not the initial reality. Mm-hmm. There were Puerto Ricans in New York, Cubans in Florida, and Mexicans in the rest of the country. So the concept of Hispanic, it's an invention just like a double hamburger, where they put us all together. But even today, we did a poll, and 2 weeks ago for the Democratic Convention, and 35% of Hispanics want to be called by their country of origin or the country of origin of their ancestors. Mm-hmm. So it's a concept we created, and in creating the Hispanic Federation, you have no idea how much convincing I have to do in a Puerto Rican town. Many of the executives of Puerto Rican organizations said, we're going to dilute our power. It has taken us a long time for Puerto Ricans to be a force in New York. And now people like you come and they call us Hispanics, we lose our identity, and then we lose the power. And my point then and now is that the sum of the parts is usually more than each part. And what we have done, it's that now, 40 years later, it feels different because in fact, now we have a very, very diverse Latino community with Mexicans being 2/3 of them, but the other third, it's rich in diversity.
And what I really appreciated in the book is how you discuss these struggles, because again, we take it for granted, but people actively pushed against you when you were at the Hispanic Federation, and the argument here was A, strength in numbers, and B, everybody else is already lopping us together. The census was doing it beforehand, so I think that was what was so important. And in thinking about Latinidad and the diversity within it, I would love for you to drill down, Luis, in the transnational or the diaspora in Puerto Rico, because I think that's very important to understand. Those who were born on the island but then came to the United States, such as yourself, talk to us about that experience, because it is a different environment here than in Puerto Rico.
Quite frankly, I did not understand when I came from Puerto Rico to New York the struggles of getting papers. And I came to New York and I immediately moved in with my aunt, who is the only relative I had in New York. And like every migrant in the world, you get to somebody's friend or family. That's where you land. And when I landed, there were two other women from my town who were moving to New York, and my aunt came. I had been here like 2 weeks. I've been in New York for 2 weeks. I said, well, one of you is moving out of here. There is this guy who's looking for a wife, and one of you is going to marry him. And you have to live together for a year. After a year, it doesn't matter. But for a year, you have to live together because you're going to have to go to interviews and they're going to ask you about his things and your things. So you're going to live together for a year. And we sat there in a real discussion. This is not like joke. Who was the best person for this dude who we didn't know? And Lydia volunteered, and she said, I'll marry him. And then it was like an arranged marriage. And then we met him. I now go to Puerto Rico. They have been married for 48 years.
That wasn't in the book. You gave us the part of the story, but that ending you did not include.
They have adult kids. But I didn't realize the struggle of the undocumented, those without papers, because in Puerto Rico since 1917, everyone is born with the American citizenship. But the experience when you go to New York, it's no different. Mm-hmm. When you don't know English, when you look different, when you speak with an accent, the experience, it's the same. That's why when I heard convicted Trump yesterday talk about going into the homes to find 11 million people to deport them, whose homes do you think they're going to go to? Just look around. If you are white and you have clear eyes or blonde hair, they're not going to knock at your doors. They're going to knock at my doors and my neighbors, regardless if you have papers or not. But that's the danger of racism, that it affects everyone, because now 2/3 of all Latinos are born in the United States. The issue of migration populating the Latino population is less and less of a reality, because more and more are like my kids and my kids' kids.
And so I think that statistic is so powerful that you have more and more native-born Latinos. Latinas have the highest birth rate.
Yep.
But at the same time, you highlighted that the fact that Spanish is still very dominant in our culture. So more of us, my kids, they kind of understand Spanish, but they don't speak as much Spanish as I would like them to. This is kind of the generalized phenomena. But you're watching ABC or CBS and you suddenly see this Verizon commercial in Spanish. Why are we seeing this infusion of Spanish language if we have less people speaking Spanish?
Because still a quarter of all, their main language continues to be Spanish. And politicians may not care, but Colgate wants us to buy their toothpaste. And Coca-Cola wants us to continue to drink Coca-Cola.
To use the toothpaste, then.
To use the toothpaste. So companies do care, and they're going to communicate in whichever language it's going to reach that consumer. But the other thing that happens in immigrant families in general, Latinos, because we're such a large number, it's that we live in multi-generational families. So my nanny, Mundi, controlled the main TV in our house. And if we wanted to watch something, we always told her, we're going to watch the 6:30 news in English. The world news we're going to watch in English. You could then watch Univision, Telemundo, whatever you want to watch the rest of the day. But we all sat to watch a telenovela, a soap, because they're fantastic. And so you are constantly bombarded with Spanish, even when your household, it's English dominant. My Walter Mercado. It's many of you won't know who Walter Mercado is, but Walter Mercado was a guy who I knew because my uncle was in theater in Puerto Rico, and he was always reading your cards and giving you his fortune and all of that. And then he became a Latin American sensation. And Lin-Manuel, my son, was interviewed for his documentary. And the question was, you're a kid from New York, born here, why Walter Mercado? Why? You can talk about Walter Mercado like first generation Latinos, because when Radio Guado was reading the signs and was going to happen that day to you, with Walter Mercado, there was silence in the house, including my 2 Spanish-speaking kids.
One of my favorite, Lin-Manuel is just amazing, and I promise we will get to some Lin-Manuel stuff, but seeing him in the Walter Mercado documentary was just one of my favorite times of seeing Lin-Manuel express himself, and it is that glue that even though you may not be a dominant Spanish speaker, this is a glue that bonds us together. Because I think what's so interesting, and you point this out, is Latinos were a collective, but unlike, say, African Americans, we don't have that same linked fate. It is a looser constellation. So, there's so much to talk about. I think I want to skip to politics, and then we're going to take a step back from politics and talk about public service more generally. But
You want to talk about the debate? No.
Luis, that's a little later.
There's a connection because migrants are eating cats and dogs.
The city manager.
Around the country.
That is not true. Well, but okay, let's talk.
That is so crazy. Yeah. No, we call the city manager. The city manager says that's not true. Only in America.
But so here's the thing, though. This, what it does, we saw the vice president's reaction last night. Like all of us here, you laugh, but it's actually not a laughable matter, right? At least because we know that these are tropes that have been used to dehumanize immigrants. And the reason the idea of a knocking on people's doors can sit is because you view them as less than human. And I think that in dealing with immigration, this is really the trickiest part. And I promise you we will come back to immigration. I don't know about the cats and dogs, but we will come back to immigration. But I want to talk about politics. I want to talk especially about Hillary Clinton. We are at the Clinton Presidential Library. And for those political junkies with us tonight, you know of Luis, you know of the many, many, many campaigns he has worked on, high-profile campaigns. I'm not going to dig into them because I would love to wonk out with you on this. But I want to focus on the HRC campaign, how you came to meet her and how you came to decide, because you had a decision to make. Actually, your business partner said, I want to work with her, but we don't have to. It's up to you, Luis. And you had to contemplate that.
I'll digress for 30 seconds. At the DNC convention, the Clintons invited me to be at their suite. And so I was there with President Clinton when Hillary is speaking. So that place, es como la canción, that girl is on fire. The whole suite was on fire. Hillary is giving the amazing speech that she gave. And to be with the faithful in the booth with the president and the faithful was unbelievable. But Hillary, my partner, told me, I got a call. Hillary's going to run for Senate. I said, New York? Is she from Arkansas? No, in New York. And it's Moynihan's seat, and she wants to do a listening tour. And I found that to be intriguing and intelligent, because it's the right thing to do when you're going somewhere. You want to hear what the people that you have not spent your life with are saying about their home. So I got involved initially in the listening tour and in sort of working the various Latinos in different parts of the state. And two things were amazing to me. One, that she didn't need a written speech. She would go in front of an audience that she just met, talking about issues that are complicated. Her campaign occurred in New York in the middle of the Vieques issue for Puerto Ricans, which was an issue that unified all Puerto Ricans. The president was the president and the one with the decision to ask the Navy to leave Vieques. So for the First Lady, senatorial candidate, your husband is the president, a community is unified, and believe me, we don't agree on many things, but on the Navy leaving Vieques, everyone wants it. And the way in which she navigated that complicated issue and could talk about it without a written speech. Now, after doing this for so long, you are constantly being asked questions. You are constantly giving your opinions. Every time you speak, you increase the probability that you're going to say something, one extra phrase, one extra sentence, one adjective that it's going to create turmoil. And the fact that she was constantly willing to take those chances by just having bullets and let her brain and her heart put sentences together solely.
I think the fearlessness of engaging as well, and having gotten to know a little bit of Secretary Clinton, is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because she wasn't from New York. Arkansas, even though it has a growing Latino population, at the time did not have a large Latino population, but to say, I want to immerse myself in this, that speaks volumes of the type of woman, of the type of leader she is.
And, you know, when she ran for president, she's the only Democrat who carried the Cuban vote.
Yes. Well, and in talking about Cuban vote, Mexican vote, Puerto Rican vote, we are 54 days away from the election. And statistical tie. Every single poll has Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in a statistical tie. So where does our attention focus? Our attention focuses on the swing states, and then more specifically, it focuses on the swing voters. And Latinos are some of the swingiest of swing voters. And I think people have forgotten, this is the political scientist in me coming out, but even though over the years Latinos have tended to vote Democratic, they do have a history of having a big chunk, if anything, a plurality that's independent and that's swingy. So in talking about Latinidad and talking about the swinginess, help us understand what is going to win the Latino vote.
I think Kamala is going to win it, and several things. One, when I compare the poll that we did a month right after the Biden-Trump debate, and 2 weeks ago, before this debate, Latinos had already moved 10%, from 49% to 59%. Mm-hmm. And groups like Puerto Ricans were already at 64%, voting for Kamala. And we spent a lot of time talking about Latinos are turning Republicans. Well, the stats tell you something different. Bush got 42% of the Latino vote. Trump got 33%. So if anything happened, was that Latinos became less Republican than when Bush was the candidate. But the challenge for Democrats throughout the country, it's that now Latinos are dispersed.
Yes.
So in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Wisconsin, we can be 5 to 7% of the vote. But when the margins to win the electoral votes in that state, it's 1 to 3%. You have to fight for every vote. So that 7% with the propensity to vote Democratic becomes crucial for the formula. Republicans don't have to win our votes. They are being nurtured by dissatisfied white voters throughout the country. So all they want is a chunk of us to finish the numbers that they need, but Democrats need 2/3 of us in most places to really put together a winning coalition. So that's what you have, real Latino campaigns in places like Georgia, and North Carolina, and Wisconsin, minuscule percentage of the population, but key. In Pennsylvania, for Biden in 2020, he got 70% of the Latino vote in Pennsylvania. So those are the numbers that we have to aspire to get in order to win the electoral vote of that state. By the way, I'm an electoral vote.
Oh.
I didn't know what that was. I thought it was this thing that the founding fathers created to give power to the smaller states. But they're actual people, the people that Trump wanted to kill with pens.
The electors. So, Luis, what is one thing that people misunderstand about the Latino vote, about Latino politics?
Probably the best way to present it is with a stat. And I talk a lot about stats. I went to do my PhD in clinical psychology. I sucked as a clinical psychologist. Horrible. I don't like people's problems.
You get frustrated with the patient.
I don't like to talk about it week after week. Just go and get a life. But what I got was statistics. It was like the only real thing that I could latch to is statistics in the social sciences. And for Latinos, when you ask them about immigration, they are concerned about the border. And it is a mistake to think that Latinos, 2/3 now born and raised in this country, are not concerned about the border. Because their parents telling them, we came the right way. We waited in line. We waited our turn until we got that visa, blah, 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 blah. And there's people quieren cortar la línea and just get here right away. But the other side of the coin, that Latinos are as preoccupied as the border, is a path to citizenship. They are worried about both things. You need to do something with 11 million of us who are here. Their kids know no other country than the US. They have married here and they need a path to citizenship. So that's what best describes to me a Latino. You're worried about everything that everyone is worried about, but you're also worried about things that are unique to your heart.
And at the core of immigration is family. Many times family reunification, making sure the family unit is together. And I want to use that pivot point, Luis, to turn away from politics for a minute. We will come back to politics. But for those of you who have read the book, or for those who will read the book, you'll see that family is a protagonist throughout. And if you can talk to us about the role of your family in your journey, And specifically in this quest for relentlessness?
Family was I grew up in a small town. My town in Puerto Rico has 6 streets. I could close my eyes and see them.
Vega Alta.
Vega Alta. And we lived on the 6th street of the town. So I come from a very small place where everyone knew everyone, where family was a little larger than just your dad, your mom. In fact, the person who I grew up seeing as my grandmother was actually my great aunt. But my real grandmother had many kids, and she took 3 and raised those 3, and one of them was my dad. So why not think that that's your grandmother? It's the person who raised my dad. But family, it's more fluid. When you come to the U.S., we continue to have as much of those fluid values as we can keep. And we also moved into a Latino neighborhood in New York. It's the same place where we have lived for 43 years. And my dad always said, you cannot go and save the world until you save your family. If your kids are in turmoil, if they're not doing well at school, if there are things happening in your home, you need to focus, because a family is the pillar of the larger community. So as much of those building blocks that are solid and intact, that community is going to be better. So that stayed in my head. I always remember, I think I tell that story in the book. In 2nd grade, we went to the parent-teacher conference that we all go to for my daughter. And the teacher, 2nd grade, tells me, your daughter is not very good in math, but that's okay. Not everyone is good in math. She's never going to be good in math. And I want to slap her, but I figure that's illegal. And I said, because they were beginning multiplication, and she was not getting multiplication. I said, have you taught her the multiplication tables? And she's like, no, that's not how we teach anymore. I said, okay. I went home. For the next 3 months, I canceled meetings. Every night we will practice multiplication tables. My daughter is an engineer and an MBA. So you have to take care of family first. And in my head, the more you involve family in everything else that you do in life, the better relationship you're going to have and the more time you're going to spend together. I saw a big sign here for the Rotary Club. My dad was a leader of the Rotary Club in my town, in Vega Alta. And I remember the Rotary Club with a lot of good heart, because there were parties. We collected toys. We had a city in the Dominican Republic that we visit every year. And we did all of that as a family. So when I created the Hispanic Federation, and on 3 Kings Day, we had a toy drive. In the radio, Lin-Manuel and Lucecita had to come to get toys, to categorize toys, to back toys, to put toys together, to take to different agencies. So I believe that that's a way to build family. You give them love, but you have to involve them in making sure that they have a social responsibility, that they develop a social consciousness. Because at the end of the day, that's what's really going to make a good community.
Well, and going back to Secretary Clinton, it takes a village. And what we see here in your book, in your life story, is there's the family, the nuclear family, and then the tios and the tias. But then there is the Rotary. There are the organizations, your dad's baseball team. You moved to New York, and you have these layers. So I think as someone wearing my Clinton School of Public Service hat, that the way you produce public service is by relying on that village, by looking to those resources. So I wanted to pivot, speaking of family, to one of your family members, Lin-Manuel, who wrote the foreword to the book. I got quite a kick out of the very first sentence, which said, I am the
He's
most...
a good kid.
Well, but he's also the most laid back in the family.
He is.
I am the most laid back family member. I'm the family slacker. You should meet my dad. I don't personally know Lin-Manuel, but I know you. And yes, I think I agree with that. And what he says here is that you pushed for the pursuit of dreams, and you pushed him likewise to do so. So your life was focused on politics after arriving to New York, but then we saw with Lin-Manuel a passion and a love for the arts. But in reading your book, I learned that this passion and appreciation for the arts did not come out of left field. So if you could talk to us about that formation of the love of arts for you.
I always loved business. My mother, she had a travel agency, and my dad was the manager of the credit union in my town. So we knew when every girl got pregnant and was sent to New York and then come back with a 7-month-old baby. And we knew the credit troubles or fortunes of everyone in town. And my mother once told me, I was like 13, I'm going to give you a wall of the travel agency. You could do whatever you want to do with that wall. I have always liked nice clothes. Always. I said, this is an opportunity to buy clothes. And I started an LP store. I found a dude in Puerto Rico who will give you at consignment LPs, records. I will sell them. And that's how I discovered musical theater. You have to understand, I had no idea what they were singing. I didn't understand the words. It was all a fascination with telling a story with music. Mm-hmm. And for that music to be such a huge part that it will move the story until the grand finale. So I have Lin-Manuel, because I still have all the records that I got since I was 13 years old. Lin-Manuel sees like, Dad, I didn't even know, is this a musical? I said, yeah, it's one of my oldest records. So we danced to salsa and merengue. Bachata was not a big thing when they were growing up. With my 23-year-old, bachata is a big thing. And we listened to musical theater music many, many, many times. Lin-Manuel says all the time that I pushed him to be a lawyer. I tried. I want him to be like Ruben Blades. And said, but then we spent hours listening to Broadway records. How can I be a lawyer when I was being fed this amazing music that tells stories. So it is. There is in my family this love for musical theater. You know, Lin-Manuel tells the story. He was a little kid. My wife was listening to Camelot, and every time she listens to Camelot, she cries. And he said to himself as a little kid, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. Something that is so powerful that it makes my mom cry. And in fact, 2 years ago, he accepted a role in Camelot so that Luz can see him in Camelot. So the fascination, it's a family thing for a long time.
All right, I'm going to dig even deeper. I want to talk about Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews.
I mean, I'm going to let...
I suffered when she had that surgery and lost her voice.
Well, and I think in Puerto Rico, you would watch these movies, and this was this connection that later on would materialize when you came to New York, when you came to the United States. So, like I said, I'm looking at the clock here.
Yeah, people are complicated. They could hate Trump and love Julie Andrews.
All right, that's a lot to process in this moment.
I tell you, Julie Andrews, you know, I saw The Sound of Music as a kid. Every week for 80 weeks. Every Sunday, I will go to see The Sound of Music for 80 weeks. That is insane. If a child of mine would have done that, I would have asked for help. Instead, my dad drove me to the theater every Sunday.
Well, and your dad is a santo. He was a saint.
Oh,
You know,
my dad was a santo.
So
yeah, no doubt about it.
the Julie Andrews piece, yes, he was taking you to see him, but your father ran for mayor in Vega Alta. And Luis decided to act as campaign manager for the person running against.
Because I was closer ideologically to the other dude.
But you see, you know, you get a sense of your dad when he was like, mijo, that's fine.
You're going to have to do what you want to do in life. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do in life. And as long as we respect each other, that's cool.
It was a yin and yang between your mom and your dad, I very much.
Yes, my mom was the tough one. You will get a B plus and you failed. And she will make you feel like you failed. So it was not only you will feel in your heart and in your skin that you failed, because she wanted us to excel. And my dad was the chill one, you know, the one like, ay, Abby, déjalo tranquilo, leave him alone, let him be, let him do other stuff that is not studying all the time, and I did.
And look, the combination, aquí.
Sold LPs and always involved in politics.
All right, let's get back to politics. We had a student session earlier, and we were talking about Hamilton and the power of bringing diversity to the arts, to Broadway, where you see a Black, an Asian American, a Latino playing a George Washington. Okay. What about in real life? When are we going to see a Latino president? And who? I'm going to throw that in there too, just because.
If you would have said you wanted to ask me that question, I would have brought my crystal ball, but I left it home.
A la
to my
Walter Mercado, like
closet.
that.
A la Walter Mercado. What I have learned in my work with Latino Victory over the last 8 years, it's the enormous talent of Latinos and African Americans and young people of all races and all colors. But they need an opportunity. Right? Always my most recent example is this young woman. Her name is Rochelle Garza. Won the primary for AG in Texas, the Democratic primary, against a criminal, Paxton, a criminal, a known criminal. But we did not support her with money. Because at the end of the day, a little campaign, you could knock at doors. A statewide campaign like Texas is a totally different ball game. You need organization, you need resources, you need money, and to get resources and organizations, you need funds. And so we use a lot of tokenism, and we put as a candidate the first African American, the first Latino, blah, 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 blah. But it makes me feel like when I went to graduate school, to my failed clinical psychologist profession, we got accepted in a revolutionary scheme where the chairman accepted 50% minorities, 50% majority in the PhD program. But then there were no professors that were interested in our topics. We could not find dissertation sponsors because the concerns that we had as Black and Latinos were different than the concerns, valid, but the concerns that majority students had. So that's the same thing with politics. You could not tell a Latino, now you go and run, if we don't arm that person with the resources to be able to have a credible campaign. What I have seen, it's incredible talent like Rochelle Garza throughout the country with candidates who we have supported throughout the country. But we have to support them beyond having them be the candidate. Because if the second part doesn't happen, then we don't finish the dream. I now say this everywhere because I want all of you to support Tony Vargas.
Tony.
Just send him $5. He's running in Nebraska, in Omaha. Peruvian American, son of Peruvian Americans in Nebraska. But if he flips his district, he also flipped an electoral vote. Because in Nebraska, electoral votes are attached to congressional districts. So if you win one, we'll get one electoral vote from a red state.
You wear so many hats. Just for reference, and you can find out more about it in the book or visiting Latino Victory Fund, what Luis is talking about in the work he has done with Latino Victory is about this. Is about putting our money where our mouth is. As Latinos or as Americans, where we can have the best candidates in the world, but if we don't have the resources behind them. Okay, I'm already over time, but I want to get to a couple of questions.
Right, that's a 0.
I know. We're good. A couple of questions that were submitted by the audience. And Aki, what has been your most significant challenge and how were you able to overcome it?
I've thought a lot about this. I just turned 70 last week. And when you begin to get older, you begin to sort of put your life in order. And that's something that I have thought a lot about. Work for Giuliani. I had been in the Health and Hospitals Corporation on the board under two Democrats. And when Giuliani becomes mayor, he asks me to become the chair. And he ran that he was putting a government of all groups and all of that. And my wife says, that guy's bad news. Before, we all knew he was very bad news. But my wife's a good clinical psychologist. I could not figure that out because I would have wanted him to handle his problems quickly. But you convince yourself that you're Superman, that you're different. No. A year later, I resigned. And I resigned over a real policy disagreement because at the end, I believe that in government, in whatever you do, you evolve. And we all evolve ideologically. Sometimes you have to be pragmatic because there's a bigger goal on the other side. But there are things that are principles. And if you break those, you can't ever put them together again. So for me, that was the biggest mistake, working with this asshole, mad at myself that I saw all the signs. People told me all the signs, but cuando un ciego no quiere ver, when you don't want to see something, you don't see something. You have to experience it.
Luz was right. And
Just always
I
right.
mean, I think this is a common theme. I love this question. Do you have a word of encouragement to invite more? The question was about to invite more young Latino leaders into public service, but I want to broaden this out as well. We are right next door to a school of public service, this first school of public service in the nation. How do we build the Army?
By going out there and entice them. That is a good thing to do. Because at the end of the day, it's the way I look at it with the arts. When we defund the arts, we deprive our kids of something that they need. It's not because they're going to become artists, but because it's part of who we should be as humans. The same thing with civic and public service. The moment we defund that and take it away, we end up with assholes like Trump. And we end up with people voting with assholes like Trump. I wish I could think of another word. I have tried very hard. So it is, for me, the arts and public service are together. We don't teach them in our schools anymore. They're not important in curriculum anymore. But at the end, they feed the soul, and it makes us be good humans. And those things are key if we're going to live in society.
Last question. I want you to leave us with homework. I want you to leave us with tarea. What do we need to do to both be relentless and joyous?
I think that we need to move from our heads and our hearts the notion that government is bad, that politicians are corrupt, There are bad governments, there's bad politicians or corrupt politicians, like in any other profession in life. But I learned that government, it's important, it's an important glue for us to live in society. And the better people we have running that government, the better society we're going to have. So we have to make sure we all get involved in politics. If you don't have the time to volunteer, that's cool. Then don't buy that tie that you were going to buy and give those $100 to a candidate who you think is going to serve the public. Now, with technology, we have huge phone banks in DC, and we're supporting candidates in Texas because geography is no longer important to send letters, to make calls, to send emails. We all have to get involved because that's the only way we are going to save this democracy and make it better.
That is fabulous homework. And what a treat to have you with us,
Thank
Luis, here in Little Rock. Please join me in thanking Luis Miranda. Right outside of the Great Hall, you will be able to buy a copy of Relentless. And Luis, if you'll be able to sign them, I think you'll be staying for a while.
Happy to.
Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Oh, I think it fell off your microphone.